right, good morning, folks. I'm working on this. This Mikey Zena Menorcan Magic handmade cast nets here in beautiful St. Augustine, Florida this morning. Just a beautiful day. But anyway, I'm working on this Dacron 5/8 mesh, and that's the smallest size net. I keep getting calls for 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch mesh nets. I don't make the small mesh. It just destroys so much of the small stuff that needs to get out and grow up. And it can get out of 5/8 mesh. I'm talking about little bitty stuff. I ain't talking about anything gets out of this net that's too small to eat and it's too small for bait. So, with that said, most people understand, but there's some that don't. Because I turned down I turned down one today. Guy called me at 7 o'clock this morning from down in Claremont. And he fishes in fresh water, catches tilapia, which are big. And he said there's an invasive catfish. I like talking to people because you learn stuff. I'd never heard. He said there's an invasive catfish from what the hell did he tell me? The Caribbean. I think he kept mentioning the Caribbean. But he said he only gets about 8 or 10 inches. I mean, how's 8 or 10 inches going to get out of that? And how is a 7, 8 pound tilapia going to get out of that? That's all. You know, I don't understand. What's he want with a 3/8 mesh net? Very adamant about that's what he want. Okay, I don't make them. So anyway, but it's interesting talking to people anyhow, because that's what he catches. Going back to the catfish there, and he said they're an invasive type, so they're kind of taking over the lakes and the pond, lakes and stuff. I don't know, but catfish and fabric type, linen, nylon. Nylon and Dacron nets and catfish are not a good mix, folks. They're not a good mix. If you're going to be catching a lot of catfish or stingrays, that type stuff with spines on them, you probably ought to stick with the monofilament nets, because they'll fall right out. These things here, they're going to have, some of them are going to hang up, and you got to be careful. Got to be careful getting them out, or you're going to, over time you're going to damage the net. So I wouldn't recommend it if you're going to be catching any quantity. And if you do catch them, just be careful getting them out. But anyway, yeah, this is going to be an 8-foot Dacron bait / shrimp net for a local gentleman here. And so anyway, I'm going to put this aside. Really, what I wanted to talk to you about today was braille lines. I've talked about we call them tucks. When I grew up learning how to make nets, they were called tucks. There's no such thing as a braille line. It's the same thing. But anyway, I want to talk to you. I've talked to you before. I've showed you about putting the tucks in a net, but I never really discussed the importance of how many do you put. What is an actual need? Well, actually, it needs to be enough that when you cast that net and start pulling it in, that you're not going to have a net like this trailing. That stuff can get out. Normally speaking, the old timers on mullet nets, we would put them. We'd put a tuck for every widening row. So if you made, and most of them back in the early days, they made 16 widening nets. So you would put 16 tucks in it. So that would be, they would follow. I don't know, Phil, if you can see that. They would follow the windings. See how the windings come down, and that's what this one's got. This one is anyhow. They would come down, but depending on what you're going to do, I made a 10-foot pogie net for my buddy Captain Phil Harbour up in Chesapeake Bay. and I put 40 tucks in it. And the reason I put 40 in it was because when you're fishing for pogies, you're fishing in deep water. The net does not sink. Pogies, Manhattan, are right on top of the water. They're on top of the water. They school on top of the water. And when you throw that net on them, you're going to bag it right away. As soon as it hits, you're going to bag it. So you want that lead line to pull in, as quick as possible. So that's why I put 40 tucks in that net. Normally, and then turn around and I made an 8-foot 5/8 mesh net for somebody here recently, and I put 28 in it. Basically, what I like to do, get away from all this mumbo jumbo I'm doing. I like to keep them somewhere between 8 and 10 sinkers apart. So that's what I've got here. I've got a tuck here, and I come down here, and here's a tuck here. And if you count that, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Normally, I try to keep them somewhere between 8 and 12 sinkers apart. So that's pretty close. That net's going to tuck fine. This is just a little 5-foot shrimp net I made for somebody that's coming by to pick it up soon. But anyway, and I've showed you before, a lot of these store-bought nets. In fact, any of them that you buy that are made come from China or who knows where. The way they put the braille lines on them, they just do a loop over that foot line, and they just start tying a bunch of half hitches up the side of the tuck, and they cut it off, and you got a wad sticking out an inch up over the top to hang up and get tangled up in the net. Plus, the tucks are too long. Ideally, you want this thing to bow just a little bit as you go around that net. You don't want it to definitely don't want the tucks too long. I know a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about because you buy these nets, monofilament nets. You know how long the tucks are. They have a tendency to tangle. So, with that said, I try to keep it, and these are secured to that. There's no way in hell it'll ever come off. You can forget that tuck, that braille line ever coming loose on that. There's nothing more aggravating than be over there at the beach back in the day, mud going everywhere, and you're out there in the surf, and you're throwing a net, and you come ashore to get the fish out of it, and you look down there, and here you got a lead line hanging down about that far where the tuck came loose. And well, that's a mess. Because you got to stop and find out where it went and tie it back in some kind of way till the end of the day, and you can clean up your net and dry it, and then you do your repairs, but whatever you need to do. Another thing is the horn, where the horn's attached. That's another issue. I'm talking about handmade nets now, folks. I ain't talking about these store-bought nets. I don't pay much mind to them how they do it. But yeah, I'm talking about handmade. Everything I talk about is based on making it by hand. And you saw as I started, I tied every knot so far. And what you see, that net is a little over 3.5 feet. It's going to be 7. I talked to you from 8 down to 7. That's all it needs for catching. But you don't need an 8-foot shrimp net, for goodness sake, to catch bait, finger mullet or shrimp. You don't need an 8 or 10-foot net for that, unless you sell them. But the average guy, you don't need it. But back to the braille lines. Depending on what type of fishing you're going to be doing, how deep of water you're going to be fishing in, what you're going to be doing is when it comes time to put your, I'm going to call them braille lines because that's what they call them. For you guys that are making your own nets, it's the ratio. I don't necessarily, because like I'm sitting here telling you, it's based on what you're going to be doing. If you're going to be fishing out in the ocean catching pogies for the kingfishermen, yeah, you want the braille lines a little closer. Definitely want them closer together. But if you're going to be shrimping, you know, another thing, the shrimp nets. If you notice that net there that I'm working on, if you notice the top's got a different color, that's a 50-pound test I put in the top, because that's where you're handling it. When you throw net over shrimp, they come straight up. They come to the top, then they run back down. But so they all bunch up in the top, and so that's where the most wear is going to be, up around. Plus, that's where your hand is. That's where you're handling it. So, and then again, I'll put a little bit of heavy stuff around the bottom that drags on the bottom. That's why I call them. That's a custom-made net. Sewing panels together is not a custom-made. Ain't nothing custom to it. You know, it's the same thing. It's the same type material size from the top to the bottom. So there's nothing custom about that. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess. But anyhow, I guess I rattled on enough about this. If anybody's interested, if you want to talk, call me. The number here is 904-217-7974. Or the email is usinamike@gmail.com. Now, I changed my website. I reduced the size of it. It wasn't really doing me a lot of good, because all my contacts are coming. This gentleman this morning got my information off of YouTube. That's where people looking at the videos, because they pick up a little bit, especially people. I mean, if you're not making handmade nets, this is going to be nothing to you, but something boring. But I try to like to get people interested in making these things. But anyway, contact us if you're interested, and tell us what you do. I enjoy hearing from people, because I learn. You never stop learning, and it's interesting. Just like that young man this morning from Clermont, Florida, is where he's at, and just to hear his, what he does, what he catches. And I had no idea about a base of catfish and lakes, that they're taking over the lakes, and they don't get real big. But hey, that's the good part about talking to people. I've learned a lot from talking to the mullet fishermen over on the West Coast. Believe me when I say the West Coast of Florida. That's Pensacola right on up into Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, all up that Gulf Coast, with their stories about the way they fish and how they fish. So it's just quite interesting. Well, I hope everybody is having a beautiful summer. Please take care of yourself. Stay safe, and don't hesitate to comment. Give me a call or email me. Back to the website. It's there. It's going to still be more Menorcan Magic, but it's just going to be a one-page information thing. If you're interested, just give us a call or email us about your desires, because I didn't put a lot of information on that thing yet. I can put a little bit more, but anyway, with that said, for goodness sake, until the next time, take care of yourself.